I'm Madison Walker, 34, and I built my yacht charter business from nothing but dreams and determination. Growing up as the responsible one, while my wealthy stepmother Gwendolyn and stepsister Rachel looked down on me, became my normal. Our annual family cruise was the one tradition I still valued, despite the tension. So when Dad called to say I wasn't invited this year, the betrayal cut deep. Before I tell you how I turned this rejection into the most satisfying moment of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. My childhood wasn't exactly picture perfect. My mom left when I was only 3, leaving my dad to raise me on his own. We weren't rich by any means, but we got by. Dad worked as a maintenance manager at the local marina in Newport, Rhode Island. Some of my earliest memories are of tagging along with him to work, watching the boats come and go, feeling the salt spray on my face, and falling in love with everything about the ocean. Those days at the marina shaped me. While other kids had fancy toys, I had boats to explore and sailors' stories to listen to. Dad taught me everything about vessels, from basic maintenance to navigation. By 12, I could tie every knot in the book and identify most boats by their silhouettes. On the horizon, the water wasn't just a place to visit, it was home. Everything changed when I turned 14. Dad met Gwendolyn Pierce at a yacht club fundraiser where he was working. She was everything he wasn't, polished, sophisticated, and dripping with old money. Within 6 months, they were married, and our humble 2-bedroom apartment was traded for her sprawling waterfront mansion. Suddenly, I had a new family, my stepsister Rachel, who was exactly my age but seemed decades ahead in terms of social graces and designer clothing, and my stepbrother Tyler, who was 2 years younger and the only one who seemed remotely interested in getting to know me. While Tyler and I found common ground through our shared interest in marine biology, Rachel made it clear from day one that I was an unwelcome addition to her perfect world. Dad changed after marrying Gwendolyn. The man who once taught me to stand my ground became someone who constantly acquiesced to his new wife's wishes. He transitioned from the confident, hard-working father I knew to a passive husband who seemed to walk on eggshells around Gwendolyn. Watching him transform was like losing him in slow motion. Despite the new family dynamics, I stayed focused on my goals. While Rachel spent her weekends at country clubs and shopping sprees funded by Gwendolyn's credit cards, I continued working at the marina. By the time high school graduation rolled around, I had enough saved for my first semester at Coastal Business School, where I studied while working part-time at various yacht clubs. College was tough, but fulfilling. While my stepsister partied through her business degree at an Ivy League school her mother paid for, I worked 60-hour weeks between classes and yacht club jobs. I learned every aspect of the maritime luxury, business from the ground up, client relations, scheduling, maintenance, staffing, and the fine details that make or break a customer experience. My senior project became the blueprint for what would eventually become Walker Maritime Experiences. I started small, a single speedboat rental service operating out of a tiny slip I could barely afford. Within 5 years, that single boat grew to a fleet of 5. By the time I turned 30, Walker Maritime had become one of the premier yacht charter companies on the East Coast, with a fleet of 15 luxury vessels and a waiting list of elite clients. The family cruise tradition began 5 years ago, supposedly as a way to bring everyone together. Gwendolyn suggested an annual week-long charter to celebrate the family's success. Of course, she never acknowledged that my company was thriving. In her eyes, I was still the maintenance man's daughter playing with boats. During these cruises, I was always invited but treated as an afterthought. Gwendolyn would make all the arrangements without consulting me, despite my expertise in the industry. Rachel would spend the entire time on her phone, occasionally looking up to make a backhanded comment about how quaint my business was compared to her corporate job, that Gwendolyn's connections had secured for her. Still, I tried. Every year, I brought thoughtfully selected gifts for everyone, a rare nautical map for Dad, vintage pearls for Gwendolyn that I spent months tracking down, first edition books for Rachel that aligned with her literary pretensions, and marine photography equipment for Tyler. Meanwhile, my gifts were usually generic, expensive but impersonal items that showed how little they actually knew about me. Despite all this, I continued to help plan these cruises behind the scenes. I'd secretly call the charter companies they booked with to arrange special experiences, sunset dinners, exclusive cove access, premium wine selections, all while letting Gwendolyn take full credit. I did it for Dad, hoping he'd see glimpses of the daughter who still loved him, even as he faded into Gwendolyn's shadow more each year. This year's cruise was supposed to be special. I'd just finalized the purchase of a stunning new yacht for my fleet, the Azure Dream, and secretly hoped the family might consider chartering from my company for once. I spent weeks picking out perfect gifts, a vintage captain's compass for Dad that once belonged to a famous New England sailor, a rare blue diamond bracelet for Gwendolyn that matched her favorite earrings, a first edition Hemingway for Rachel, and an underwater drone for Tyler's marine research. I was wrapping Tyler's gift when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a smile, expecting to discuss cruise details. "Madison, sweetheart," he began, his voice unnaturally tight. "How are you doing?" Something in his tone made my stomach drop. "I'm good, Dad. Just getting ready for the cruise next month. Is everything okay?" The silence that followed lasted a beat too long. "About that, there's been a slight change of plans this year." "Change of plans?" I repeated, already knowing whatever came next wouldn't be good. Gwendolyn thought it might be nice to keep things more intimate this year. His words came out rehearsed, as if he'd practiced them. "Intimate?" I echoed, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Yes, well, you know how these yacht charters are. Space considerations and all that," he cleared his throat. "She thought it might be best to focus on immediate family this time around." The words hit like a physical blow. "Immediate family," I repeated flatly. "And I'm not considered immediate family? After 20 years? Madison, please try to understand." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Gwendolyn and Rachel have planned everything already. They've invited Rachel's new fiancé, Julian, to join us. It's important for Gwendolyn to make a good impression on his family. They're very well connected in Boston." I closed my eyes, a memory surfacing from 3 weeks earlier. We'd had a family dinner at Gwendolyn's insistence. Rachel had spent the entire evening dropping hints about Julian's family wealth, old money from shipping industries. When I mentioned signing a new corporate client, Rachel had smiled thinly and said, "It must be so fulfilling to run a little boat taxi service for the nouveau riche." Gwendolyn had laughed delicately while Dad studied his plate. "So I'm being uninvited because Rachel's embarrassed by me," I said, the pieces falling into place. No, that's not it at all," Dad protested weakly. "It's just timing and space. This year. We'll make it up to you, I promise." "Did you stand up for me at all?" I asked, already knowing the answer. His silence was confirmation enough. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the lump in my throat. "Well, enjoy your cruise." "Madison," he started, but I ended the call. I sat motionless in my apartment, surrounded by carefully wrapped gifts for people who'd just excluded me from what was supposed to be a family tradition. On my coffee table lay photos from previous cruises, forced smiles and tense postures that I'd convinced myself were just bad timing, not indicators of how they really felt about me. After an hour of staring at the wall, I called the one person in the family I thought might give me honest answers. "Tyler? Do you have a minute to talk?" My stepbrother sounded genuinely distressed. "Madison, I just heard. I'm so sorry. This is completely messed up." "What's really going on? Dad gave me some nonsense about space limitations." Tyler sighed, heavily. "It's all Rachel and her stupid fiancé. Julian comes from this super elite family, and Rachel's been exaggerating about our family's status. She told him we've been yacht people for generations. I almost laughed at the irony. And I'm what? The working class embarrassment? Something like that, Tyler admitted reluctantly. Rachel convinced Mom that having you along would expose her lies. She told Julian you run some small boat rental kiosk at the beach, not a successful charter company. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. And Gwendolyn went along with it. Mom's always been jealous of you, Tyler said quietly. You built something on your own. Rachel's job, her condo, her car. Mom paid for all of it. I think it kills her that you never needed her money. And Dad? I asked, though I already knew. He tried to argue, but you know how he gets around Mom. He just gave in. After hanging up, I sat with my hurt, letting it wash over me in waves. I thought about calling them back, confronting them all, demanding the respect I deserved. But something stopped me. A lifetime of taking the high road had gotten me nowhere with them. Maybe it was time for a different approach. After a restless night, I woke up with a nagging question. Which charter company had they booked this year? In previous years, they'd used different services, always high-end but never the absolute best, which I knew with professional pride was my own company. Pure curiosity drove me to find out who'd gotten their business this time. I called my assistant first. Jessica, can you check if we have any bookings under Pierce, Walker, or possibly Somerset? Somerset was Rachel's fiancé's last name. Let me check, Jessica replied. After a moment, she said, Nothing under those names directly. Want me to check corporate bookings too? Please. It was a long shot, but worth checking. There's a week-long charter booked by Somerset Holdings LLC for next month. 7-day Nantucket to Martha's Vineyard route? That was too coincidental. Can you send me the details? When the booking information appeared in my inbox, my suspicion grew. The dates aligned perfectly with the annual family cruise. Somerset Holdings LLC was likely a shell company Julian's family used. But the real shock came when I saw which vessel they'd booked. The Azure Dream, my newest yacht, my company. They had booked their exclusive family cruise, the one I wasn't good enough to be invited to, through my own company. I called our booking manager immediately. Mark, the Somerset Holdings booking for the Azure Dream next month. Did you handle that personally? Yes, through a high-end concierge service. Very particular client. Requested our finest vessel and specifically asked about the Azure Dream after seeing it featured in Luxury Travel magazine. Did they mention any connection to me? Not at all. Should they have? I laughed, a strange disbelieving sound. No, thank you, Mark. The irony was almost too perfect. Gwendolyn and Rachel had chosen my company because of its stellar reputation in the industry. They'd selected my flagship yacht, the one I'd personally designed with an architect over 18 months, the one featured in magazines and booked, solid for the next 2 years except for the occasional cancellation, and they had no idea. My first instinct was to cancel their reservation immediately. I had every right. We had clauses for that. But cancellation felt too simple, too expected. It wouldn't teach them anything about respect or consequences. That night, I called my best friend Jasmine, who'd been by my side since college, through every up and down of building my business. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. And they booked your yacht? Your actual company? The Azure Dream. My baby. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. So what are you going to do? Please tell me you're not just going to let this go like you always do. Her words stung with truth. I had always taken the high road with my family, swallowing their slights and microaggressions year after year. I'm thinking of canceling their booking, I admitted. Jasmine was quiet for a moment. That seems unsatisfying and not very you. What do you mean? Canceling is reactive. You're a strategist, Madison. You built an empire by thinking 3 steps ahead. There has to be a more educational response. As we talked through possibilities, an idea began to form. Outrageous. At first, then increasingly perfect. By the time we hung up, I was smiling for the first time since Dad's call. This time, I wouldn't just take the high road. I'd own the entire highway. The next morning, I met Jasmine for coffee to flesh out the details of what we'd dubbed Operation Family Education. "So you're really going to do this?" Jasmine asked, a mix of concern and excitement in her voice. I nodded, stirring my latte. The Azure Dream needs a captain for that week anyway. Our regular captain, Michael, has been asking for time off to attend his daughter's graduation. I'll just take his place. And they won't recognize you? I smiled. When was the last time? Any of them, except maybe Tyler, really looked at me? Besides, I'll have a new haircut, captain's uniform, and sunglasses. People see what they expect to see. Over the next 3 weeks, I meticulously prepared. I purchased a crisp new captain's uniform, more formal than what I typically wore when occasionally captaining charters. I visited my salon for a shorter, darker hairstyle, dramatic enough to change my appearance but still professional. I practiced speaking in a slightly different cadence, more clipped and authoritative than my natural speech pattern. I met with Giovanni, my executive chef, to plan special menus tailored to what I knew about Julian's preferences based on social media research. Nothing too obvious, I instructed. I want subtle touches that make him feel catered to without understanding why. The most challenging part was meeting with my crew. I gathered the 6 staff members who would be on the Azure Dream for that charter. All longtime employees I trusted implicitly. I need your absolute discretion for this charter, I explained after sharing the situation. They can't know who I am until I choose to reveal it. My first mate, Carlos, who'd been with me since I had only 3 boats, grinned widely. Count us in, boss. These people need to learn who they're dealing with. The night before the cruise, doubt crept in. Was I being petty? Should I just cancel and be done with it? I called Jasmine in a moment of uncertainty. I'm second-guessing everything, I admitted. Madison, she said firmly, these people have dismissed your accomplishments, excluded you from family events, and made you feel less than for years. You're not planning anything mean or destructive. You're simply showing them the truth in a way they can't ignore. That's not petty. That's powerful. Her words steadied me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. The morning of the cruise dawned clear and perfect. 75 degrees with a gentle breeze, ideal for sailing. I arrived at the marina 3 hours early to prepare. The Azure Dream waited at the dock, gleaming white against the blue water. At 145 feet, she was the crown jewel of my fleet, sleek, modern, and luxurious without being gaudy. Her 3 decks included 6 staterooms, a jacuzzi, a gourmet kitchen, and state-of-the-art navigation systems. I'd designed her interior myself, choosing every fabric, fixture, and finish. As I walked through the yacht, checking that everything was perfect, I reminded myself of my boundaries. I wouldn't be cruel. I wouldn't lose my composure. This was about standing my ground professionally and personally. Jasmine arrived an hour before the family was due, bringing me a coffee and a pep talk. You look different, she said, studying my transformation. The haircut really works, and that uniform, she whistled appreciatively. Different enough? I asked, securing my captain's hat. Definitely. Plus, they're not expecting you. Their brains won't make the connection. She squeezed my hand. You've got this. I took my position at the helm, heart racing despite my careful preparation. Through the windows, I saw the familiar black SUV pull up to the marina entrance. Showtime. From my vantage point on the bridge, I watched my family approach. Dad looked uncomfortable in pressed khakis and a blue blazer that Gwendolyn had probably selected. Gwendolyn herself walked with perfect posture in a white linen outfit that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. her blonde hair immaculately styled despite the breeze. Rachel strode beside a tall, conventionally handsome man I assumed was Julian, her arm possessively linked with his. Tyler trailed behind, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. Carlos greeted them at the gangway. "Welcome to the Azure. Dream, we're honored to have you aboard." Gwendolyn smiled thinly. "We expect nothing but the best. I trust everything is prepared to our specifications?" "Of course, ma'am. The crew will show you to your staterooms." I watched through the security cameras as they toured the yacht. Their reactions would have been satisfying under any circumstances. Mouths agape at the hand-carved mahogany details, appreciative murmurs at the Italian marble bathrooms, and genuine awe at the panoramic views from the main salon. But knowing they had no idea this was all my creation made it exceptional. "My goodness," I heard Gwendolyn say loudly, clearly for Julian's benefit. "I'm so pleased with my selection. It's challenging to find truly superior vessels these days, but I have an eye for these things." Rachel laughed, that practiced social laugh she'd perfected years ago. "Mom always knows the best of everything. Julian, didn't I tell you? Our family has exacting standards when it comes to yachting." Julian nodded politely, but seemed more interested in the yacht itself than their posturing. "The craftsmanship is remarkable, very tasteful, not ostentatious like so many luxury vessels." I smiled to myself. That had been exactly my design philosophy. Once they were settled, it was time for my entrance. I adjusted my sunglasses, straightened my captain's hat, and descended to the main deck where they had gathered for welcome champagne. "Good afternoon," I said, using the slightly lower, more authoritative voice I'd practiced. "I'm Captain Madison. Welcome aboard the Azure Dream." I saw no flash of recognition in their eyes, just the polite acknowledgement one gives service personnel. Dad squinted slightly, a small furrow between his brows suggesting something seemed familiar. But the moment passed. "I'll be conducting your safety briefing before we depart," I continued, outlining emergency procedures and yacht protocols with professional efficiency. "Your comfort and safety are our highest priorities. If you have any questions or special requests during your voyage, please don't hesitate to ask me or any crew member." Rachel barely looked up from her phone during my briefing. Gwendolyn listened with the patronizing attention of someone who believes they're doing you a favor by acknowledging your existence. Only Julian and Tyler seemed genuinely engaged. "How long have you been a captain?" Julian asked. "I've been on the water my entire life," I answered truthfully. "Professionally captaining for about 12 years now." "Fascinating," Julian replied. "I've always respected maritime professionals. My family's shipping business was built on the expertise of captains and crew." Rachel tugged at his arm. "Darling, let's not bore everyone with business talk. We're here to relax." I excused myself to return to the bridge, hiding my smile. As I navigated the Azure Dream out of the harbor, executing a perfect departure that would have made my teenage self proud, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Hurt at being so easily dismissed by my own family, yet validation that they truly had no idea what I'd built. The first meal was served on the aft deck, a gourmet lunch prepared by Giovanni. I stayed mostly out of sight, but occasionally passed through to check on their experience. Each time, they barely acknowledged me, continuing their conversations, as if I were invisible. "The charter company's reputation is well-deserved," I overheard Gwendolyn telling Julian. "Although one expects excellence at these prices." "Speaking of which," Julian replied, "I'm curious about the ownership structure of this company. It's extraordinarily well run." Rachel quickly interjected, "Let's not discuss business matters on vacation, darling. It's so dreary." Later, while passing the lower deck, I overheard Rachel and Gwendolyn talking in hushed tones. "Can you imagine Madison here?" Rachel laughed softly. "She'd probably be asking the crew about engine specifications or something equally tedious." "It's better this way," Gwendolyn replied. "Julian seems quite impressed." No need to remind him, Of your stepsister's little boat rental business. I gripped the railing tightly, their words confirming everything Tyler had told me. But instead of the anger I expected to feel, I found myself oddly calm. Tomorrow would come soon enough. The second day brought perfect weather, clear skies with just enough breeze for comfortable sailing. I navigated to a secluded cove known for its crystal-clear waters and dramatic cliffs, accessible only to those with local knowledge and smaller vessels. It was one of my favorite spots on the coast, a place I'd discovered years ago and rarely shared with charter clients. The family lounged on the sun deck, Gwendolyn and Rachel positioned for maximum sunbathing efficiency while Dad and Julian discussed golf. Tyler had spent the morning with a marine biology book, occasionally asking passing crew members questions about local sea life. At noon, Carlos announced lunch would be served on the main deck. Giovanni had outdone himself with a seafood spread, featuring local catches prepared with Mediterranean influences. As they gathered around the table, I decided the moment had come. I approached the table without my sunglasses, hat respectfully removed as a captain should when addressing guests directly. "I hope everything is to your satisfaction," I said, in my natural voice. "I selected this cove especially for our voyage today." Dad looked up first, a forkful of sea bass halfway to his mouth. His eyes widened, the fork clattering to his plate. "Madison?" Gwendolyn turned sharply, her composed facade cracking for perhaps the first time in our 20-year acquaintance. The crystal wine glass in her hand tilted dangerously, red liquid sloshing over the rim onto the immaculate tablecloth. Rachel's reaction was the most dramatic. Her face drained of color so completely that for a moment I worried she might faint. What are you doing here?" she stammered. I smiled calmly. "Surprised to see me on the family cruise?" Julian looked between us all, confusion evident. "I'm sorry, what's happening? Do you all know the captain?" "She's not the captain," Rachel blurted. "She's my stepsister, the one who works at the marina." The last words came out weakly, her lie exposed in real time. "Actually," I corrected gently, "I am indeed the captain, and the owner, of this yacht and the entire charter company you're currently enjoying." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the seagulls seemed to pause their cries. "That's not possible," Gwendolyn finally said, her voice brittle. "This is a multi-million dollar vessel." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "The Azure Dream is the flagship of Walker Maritime Experiences, my company. The same company you selected for your intimate family cruise, the one I wasn't quite family enough to be invited to." Tyler's sudden laughter broke the tension. "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen," he declared, not bothering to hide his delight. Dad stood up unsteadily. "Madison, I can explain." "There's no need," I interrupted, maintaining my composure. "I understand exactly what happened. Rachel needed to impress Julian's family, and my presence as the working-class stepsister who runs a little boat rental kiosk would have exposed her pretensions." Julian's head swiveled toward Rachel. "You said your stepsister worked at a rental booth at the beach. This is her company? The one that was featured in Forbes last quarter?" Another silence fell over the table. "What none of you bothered to learn," I continued calmly, "is that I built this company from nothing. No family connections, no inherited wealth, no shortcuts. Just hard work, vision, and perseverance. Values Dad taught me before he forgot. Them himself." Dad flinched as if I'd slapped him. "I don't expect apologies," I said. "This isn't about making you feel bad. It's about standing up for myself after years of being treated as less than, despite my accomplishments. It's about refusing to be uninvited from my own family because I might embarrass you with my success." Gwendolyn attempted to regain control. "This is highly unprofessional. We contracted for a private charter, not a family therapy session." "Actually," I replied, "as owner, I have the right to captain any vessel in my fleet. All services you contracted for will be provided at the exceptional standard Walker Maritime is known for. The only difference is that now you know exactly who's providing them." Rachel stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I'm going to my room." "By all means," I said. "Though there's nowhere else to go on a yacht in the middle of a private cove. Perhaps you could swim to shore? It's only about 2 miles. Tyler's snort of laughter earned him a glare from his sister and mother. Julian cleared his throat. "I think I need to better understand what's happening here." He turned to Rachel. "You told me your stepsister was some sort of beach attendant. Why would you misrepresent her success?" Rachel stammered, unable to formulate a convincing lie. "And sir," Julian continued, addressing my father, "you allowed your daughter to be excluded from a family event on a yacht that she owns? I must say, my family values loyalty and honesty above all. This situation is concerning." It was the first time I'd seen Dad stand up to Gwendolyn in years. "You're right," he said quietly. "What we did was wrong. I've been wrong for a very long time." Gwendolyn attempted damage control. "We simply wanted a quiet cruise this year. Madison is so busy with her business. We thought she wouldn't have time. Yet somehow I managed to clear my schedule to captain this voyage," I pointed out. "Interesting how that worked out." For the remainder of lunch, an uneasy truce prevailed. But the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The truth was out, and no amount of social maneuvering could stuff it back into the box of family secrets where it had lived for so long. The final day of the cruise brought unexpected developments. As the Azure Dream cut through calm morning waters, Dad asked if we could speak privately. On the forward deck, away from the others, he struggled to meet my eyes. "I've failed you," he said finally. "Not just with this cruise, but for years. Watching you handle this situation with such grace and strength, it reminded me of who you've always been, and who I used to be." "Why did you stop standing up for me?" I asked, the question I'd wanted to ask for 2 decades. He sighed heavily. "After your mother left, I was so afraid of being alone. When I met Gwendolyn, she represented security, stability. I convinced myself that compromising was necessary to keep the peace. Eventually, compromising became surrendering. I surrendered my backbone, my values, and worst of all, my relationship with my daughter. I needed my dad," I said simply. "Not someone who would throw me under the bus to please his new wife." "I know," he nodded, tears in his eyes. "I can't undo the past, Madison, but I can promise to do better going forward, if you'll give me the chance." I didn't offer immediate forgiveness. That would come with time and consistent action. But I did agree to a fresh start with clear boundaries. No more allowing Gwendolyn or Rachel to dictate our relationship. No more pretending my career is less than it is. No more exclusion. He agreed to all my terms, adding, "I'm so proud of what you've built, Madison. I should have said that every day." Later that morning, Julian approached me on the bridge as I checked our course back to harbor. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "You don't know me well enough to owe me anything," I replied. "Perhaps not, but I participated in a situation that was created to exclude you, however unwittingly. That deserves an apology." He paused. "For what it's worth, I'm impressed not just by your business, but by how you handled this situation. Many would have canceled the charter or created a scene." "That wouldn't have solved anything," I said. Julian nodded thoughtfully. "Rachel and I have some things to discuss when we return. Honesty is essential in any relationship." Rachel herself maintained a chilly distance, though I occasionally caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Something between resentment and reluctant respect. She'd lost the upper hand in a game I hadn't even known we were playing, and clearly didn't know how to proceed. Gwendolyn, ever the social strategist, eventually approached with a stiff acknowledgement of the situation. Your company provides excellent service, she offered, which was as close to a compliment as I'd ever received from her. Perhaps we misjudged the scope of your enterprise. I simply thanked her for choosing Walker Maritime, as I would any client. The most surprising development came from Tyler, who sought me out during our final evening at sea. "You're my hero," he declared, leaning against the railing beside me as we watched the sunset. "What you did took serious courage." "I just showed them the truth," I said. "That's the hardest thing to show people who've built their lives around convenient fictions," Tyler replied with unexpected wisdom. "Listen, I've been thinking about my future. My marine biology degree isn't doing much good at the investment firm Mom pushed me into. Any chance your company needs someone who knows their way around marine ecosystems?" I smiled at my stepbrother, the one family member who'd always seen me clearly. "I might have a position for the right candidate. Send me your resume when we get back." As the Azure Dream docked the following morning, I felt a curious lightness. Something had shifted, not just in my family's perception of me, but in how I viewed myself. For years, I'd sought their approval while telling myself I didn't need it. Now, standing in my truth, I realized I truly didn't. That evening, I met Jasmine for dinner, recounting the experience over pasta and wine. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now, I keep building my company, living my life, and enforcing my boundaries," I replied. "The rest is up to them." In the months that followed, things evolved in ways I couldn't have predicted. Dad began calling regularly, without Gwendolyn's knowledge at first, then openly as he reclaimed his independence. Our relationship wasn't instantly healed, but it was honest. For the first time in decades, Julian reached out 3 months later. He and Rachel had broken up, their relationship unable to survive the exposure of her deceptions. He proposed a business partnership between his family's shipping company and my charter business that proved mutually beneficial. Tyler joined Walker Maritime as our environmental compliance officer, his passion for marine conservation bringing valuable perspective to our operations. He flourished away from Gwendolyn's controlling influence, eventually developing an eco-friendly certification program for luxury vessels that earned industry recognition. Rachel and Gwendolyn remained distant, though Christmas cards and occasional, stiff family gatherings kept minimal connections intact. Some relationships can't be fully repaired, and that's okay. My own healing journey took time. The initial vindication gave way to more complex emotions. Sadness for the family relationships I'd never truly had, anger at years of diminishment, and finally, peace in knowing I'd stood up for myself with dignity. I expanded my business with newfound confidence, no longer seeking validation from those who couldn't or wouldn't give it. I built connections with friends and colleagues who appreciated me for who I was, creating a chosen family based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Through it all, I learned the crucial difference between forgiveness and being a doormat. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the same treatment to continue. It means releasing the anger while maintaining healthy boundaries. Sometimes, the most powerful response to those who've underestimated you isn't loud confrontation, but quiet competence and the courage to show them exactly who you are. If you're facing similar family dynamics or struggling with people who diminish your accomplishments, remember that standing in your truth isn't petty or vindictive. It's necessary for your self-respect. You don't need to create elaborate revelations like I did. Sometimes simply refusing to hide your light is revolutionary enough. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't appreciate your success? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to be proud of what they've built. Thank you for listening, and remember, the most satisfying success is the kind you create on your own terms, whether others recognize it or not.